Hey, welcome back to another edition of Doggin It. I think you know who I am. You know what the show is. You know what the page is. It's going to be a fun morning full of topics and conversations. I don't know who I'm more excited to have on. You guys know based off the title that we got Karl Boyes coming on here in just a minute. But the guy that I'm real excited to talk to and bring in is this guy. This guy
Get
right
out
here,
of here.
Joey
Oh,
Ryan. Joey,
shucks.
how are you, buddy?
Oh, man, I'm good. I'm good. I was dying ever since you had that interview with Ishaun, probably what, 4 or 5 days ago now. I've been trying to pin you down, man. Like, we got to talk about this stuff. And, you're like, well, tomorrow morning we got Karl coming on. I'm like, thanks for telling me, So I don't
Yeah.
know. I've
Well,
been logged
I
on
was
for
trying.
45 minutes, a time change. You don't even tell nobody.
I'm sleeping in a dungeon here in at this hotel, and it's pretty cold and comfortable. And so yeah, when I woke up, he said let's change to 9:30. I said let's do it, and yeah, it's gonna work out well. But the Ishaun thing, I came over here to the Texas Open. I didn't expect all this shit to blow up the way that it did. I mean, it did, and it's already happened. But it wasn't my intent as I was planning a trip coming up to Round Rock. So nevertheless, we're here. Situation is what it is. Let's bring on Karl, uh, the player rep, Matchroom pool commentator, former Moscone Cup vice captain. How are you, buddy?
I'm good. How are you? Where's the other troublesome one, Palazzo?
Man, I text them. I think I've been causing too much trouble. Now Mike's leaving me on red. I don't think he responded to my last message. So
Scared to
we'll
come
see.
on, is he?
Mike's a real
Well,
journalist. Mike's got to stay impartial. He's a real journalist. We just fly by the seat of our pants over here.
guilty, guilty. That's for sure.
Hey, today, Karl, it's a great day for you to be joining us here in the United States. It's Labor Day, and I was
Mhm.
thinking you're like one of the hardest working men in pool. I watch you all day long commentate matches, and then I walk by the bar at like 6 o'clock at night, and you're there talking to people, and then I come back from dinner. It's like 10, 11 o'clock. You're still at the bar talking to people, like.
Joey, Emily's watching this.
She knows you. She knows you by now.
somebody who looks like me. It's definitely not me. That.
Yeah.
No, but you're such a familiar face, Karl. And everybody loves your commentary. Everybody loves the work that you're putting in. And, this whole thing kind of blew up this week. And I'm just curious to get your initial thoughts on it. I mean, I don't think Molina was expecting some of the things that came out on that podcast with WPA. Obviously, you're with Matchroom. Just what are your general thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, obviously they've come on the podcast. I've watched it live as well. Obviously, WPA kind of sit in the background, really, don't they? Over the years, it's always been hard to like sort of contact someone or speak to somebody from WPA to find out, any answers to any questions you may have. So obviously, the fact that they've come on and obviously the two mics have grilled them and obviously caused this outrage, I think it's about time. I think this is what we need because obviously, pool's such a big game played all over the world. I know there's different disciplines and size tables, but pool in general. And I've always felt it should be bigger than what it is. So I think now's the perfect time, obviously with the World 9-Ball Tour and obviously the WPA sanctioning a few more of the events that we used to have. So I think now's the right time.
Let's talk like pre-World Nine Ball Tour, Karl. When you were going and playing World Championships in the days of Qatar, what were those? And you in general as a competing player, what was the players' take on the WPA even back then?
Listen, I don't know a single player that's got a good word to say about the WPA.
Neither do
I
I.
played, this is nothing to do with Matchroom at the end of the day. I know obviously I work for the tour, but previous to that, I quit. I think I quit around 2016, 17. So, I played under WPA sanctioned events. I played on the Euro Tour. Every player that you spoke to, there was just nothing else to play in, basically. So you were sort of forced. Now, World 9-Ball Championships went to Qatar. Funnily enough, I actually played the first ever Matchroom event I ever played in was in 2007 in Manila, the one that Daryl Peach won. So I went and played in that, did okay in the event and thought, oh, this is great. It was like $20,000 for semi-finals. Peach won $100,000. It was live on TV. The crowds were there. I thought, this is the future because I come from English 8-ball. with no crowds. So I thought, this is a bit of me. This is limelight. You're on TV. You feel like a movie star. So I thought, this is me. And then that was it. Matchroom didn't have the World 9-Ball Championships again. And then we went to Qatar for 10 years where, it was a shambles. You couldn't really watch the event. Even my friends back home didn't know if you was winning, losing. The winner of the event, you was getting no media stuff. The venue up the road from the hotel, it was the Qatar Federation Academy. They were charging us to practice. You had to book a table. They were charging us. It's like we're here for a World Championships and you're charging us to practice. I think 1 year, maybe 2 years, they actually had the event in the federation. The year Bustamante won, he won it in the federation. If you look on the footage, that's the Qatar Federation. So it was just always felt very shambolic. And listen, I know WPA don't run the tournament. I get that. They're the governing body. But they're supposed to oversee everything. And they keep saying that they look after the professionals and it's their job. But the professional side of pool has been nothing but a shambles.
Yeah, they deem themselves as the authority in pool, and I've been watching pool for almost 20 years now, and
Yep.
I would wake up and follow the Qatar World Championships. One of my favorites was watching you in Qatar play Efren. I remember in the World Championship 9-ball. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to that interview and the WPA, to be fair and for full disclosure, they had weeks to prepare. They knew exactly what was coming, and I don't think we did a whole lot to kind of like trap them or bait them into anything. I didn't expect it to go the way that it did, and we had no heads up that Ishaun was going to drop that bomb as far as suspending players. He never gave us any kind of inkling at all. So when all this stuff kind of went down, it just was what it was, and we had to run with it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously their rules are if you play in unsanctioned events, obviously there's going to
Right.
be consequences for players. So obviously, other than the World 9-Ball Championships, our events are not sanctioned.
Right.
We're not sanctioned under the WPA. Obviously, they've got some meet in October, right? So we'll see what they're going to do. But by their rights, they've got to ban players. But I don't see how they can be banning like the likes of Joshua Filler, Sanchez, all these guys at the top of the game when, what events have we ever had to play in, sanctioned events? China Open starting this week, right? In Shanghai.
Right.
I played in that event 4 or 5 times. It's played in a sports hall, no table lighting, very humid there. So you're pretty much playing in the dark. It was always very difficult to play there. They're not the promoter. I understand it. Also, the promoter of the China Open, if they've not got rules to follow, they're just going to do what they want to do, right? So there's no sort of like standard to be set for anyone. It just seems to me like WPA over the years are just happy to get the events on, take the percent and just, make out as if like the governing body of pool and they've got our best interests at heart. But the professional side of it, they've never had our interest at heart. That's period. Juniors, ladies, wheelchair players, yeah, it's there. Hence probably why there's all this amateur thing getting thrown around now, because that's the way we feel.
Which is a dig, but I like it though.
I mean, listen, at the end of the day, it's factual. I'm talking from a player's perspective. When you look at like the events, the big events, what was under the WPA banner before Matchroom decided to go, full force and invest in the sport, like the World 8-Ball, which I won. I think it started in 2004. It's been on 8 times since 2004. But if you spoke to the WPA, they will just say, well, we're not the promoter. So it's very easy to just say, oh, we're the governing body of pool and we're looking after the best interests for the sport. But I don't believe you are.
Well, you bring up the likes of Filler and Ruiz, but there's another player in that game as well that are going to have a pretty big say, because Predator's gonna not be too thrilled if their key marquee players get banned from playing in the World 8-Ball and the World 10-Ball Championship. So these are going to have ripple down effects that we haven't even begun to see. I'd imagine that's part of the reason why we saw some backtracking after Ishaun came on and pretty much said it was, for all sakes and purposes, a done deal. But yeah, we'll see what happens in October.
I don't think he said it was a done deal, Mike. In fairness, he said that they're going to take it to their General Assembly and vote on it, but it seems to be leaning that way, right?
I mean, he pretty much said that based off of everyone that he spoke to, that they were all in agreement that this was the route they wanted to take. And I'm paraphrasing here, but it wasn't. They in the press release they're now saying it's not a done deal, but he said it multiple times on the interview.
Well,
I think what they're thinking is obviously they've got all the federations with them, but how many of the federations are actually paying money to some players anyway?
Well, don't they pay for travel? Like, aren't there players getting their travel paid for through the federations for a lot of events?
Yeah, but which events? There's no events.
WPA sanctioned events. They have to be WPA sanctioned events.
But there's no tournaments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then it's just based off of performance things. At least some of the players that I've talked to, and I'm not going to mention federations, but over the last few days, I've talked to a lot of different European players from the big federations down to smaller ones as well. So,
yep.
So I think it was Moscone Cup when Barry made the announcement about distancing yourself from the WPA or WPA, and then Ishaun brought up the issue of the contract, the Matchroom contract. But Karl, I give you a hard time online sometimes with some of the stuff that you post. You know, I kind of look at you as brash. Sometimes you're brash as a player sometimes. And I think sometimes even now in your support of Matchroom and their initiatives. And so you've been putting up a hashtag for probably, I don't know, last few months.
Maybe
hashtag
a year.
The takeover.
Yeah.
And I even came back and I'm like, what are you taking over? You know, and I kind of just wanted to see what you'd say about it. And you're like, the game. And I always thought that might have been kind of showing your dominance over maybe some of the other promoters out there. But do you think maybe the WPA may have interpreted that as you trying to take over the game from, and infringe on what they're doing as opposed to other promoters?
Well, not really, because they're not a promoter, are they? They're the governing body. I don't see anyone else who's putting the money where their mouth is like Matchroom. I've played under Matchroom events before Emily was even about. I was a player before she even worked like in the limelight of Matchroom, right? When you play a Matchroom event, they look at you like, obviously, you're the star, you're the professional pool player. They never talk down to you. They can't do enough for you. Any player, even now, let alone back in the day, if you've got a question, someone within the team will answer. You'll get spoken to with respect. Everything's always been sound. You always get paid. You know what I mean? You're never waiting for money. Jason Shaw won the Kuwait Open, the only Kuwait Open to ever exist under the WPA. He won, I think it was $40,000 or $60,000. It took him over a year to get paid. Now, I'm not saying that's WPA's fault, by the way, because they're not the promoter, but they've got the best interests at heart, right?
I think WPA's stance, though, is that you're going outside of Matchroom is going outside of being a promoter, and they're supposed to be the authority on pool, and it's like Matchroom is now trying to be the authority.
Yeah, but why are they the authority? Because of what?
That's exactly what Ishaun would say.
I asked the questions here, Karl.
Exactly what Ishaun would go and say is not a whole lot. I mean, they'll give you the federation stance, they'll give you the IOC position, and that they grant them the authority. But the fact of the matter is, they don't do anything. They don't. Listen, and I think that to be fair, on the junior side of things, they do a lot when it helps to cultivating young players. Yeah. That much I'll give them credit for.
I'm not disputing the ladies' game, the juniors, the wheelchair, and all that. I get it, right? But this is why, obviously, we're saying they're the amateur side, aren't they? Because the whole point is, if we're looking at pool, you used to play pool, you follow pool just like we all do. It doesn't matter what level we're all at. Everyone's playing it. 9-ball pool's a unique game where you could literally name like a real quality player from literally all sides of the frigging world. It's actually unbelievable. When you look at sports like golf and tennis, they probably don't even have what we've got. The potential. So obviously 9-ball's a fast, exciting game to watch. It's not boring. Obviously, we've got to feed off the Moscone Cup. I played my first Moscone Cup was in 2010, 350 people at York Hall. Now there's 3,000. So I think obviously the modern day, obviously Matchroom have thought, well, there's a lot more to this sport than maybe we once realised. Back in the day, it's growing. And obviously when you look at the players worldwide that play, there's quality players from all over the world. It's very unique. Now, also, I know like this thing with a contract thing, but obviously the thing is, WPA, Ishaun was making out as if Matchroom don't want to sanction the events. That's what it looked like to me. He was saying, we don't want to sanction. But that's technically not true because they had a verbal agreement to say everything was going to be sanctioned and done. And then at the last minute, they pulled the plug because they didn't want to agree on our ranking, on the World 9 Ball Tour ranking. So this is where we're at with it. So obviously Emily and the team have been pushed into a position. But if you look at what they've actually achieved in this short space of time, 2019, they got the rights to the US Open, the one that Filler beat Wooing. Then obviously we had COVID. We played a Moscone Cup during COVID with no crowd. WPA, the promoters, the events they were sanctioning, which is only China Open, World 8 Ball, World 10 Ball, they just stopped. The bottom line is, without Matchroom, there's never going to be a professional tour, anything. Because WPA have been involved forever. And again, they're the governing body. So they're not the promoters. They just hope people promote tournaments, give them the sanctioning. And what if the promoters are no good at running the tournaments? Where do we go? This is all we've seen for the last 25 years.
There's no accountability, no transparency when it comes to the WPA. And this is part of like what's pissed me off and starting to deal with them, over the last few months, is that they want to flex like they like the sport owes them something or the players owe them something. But like Karl said earlier, find me a player who has something really good to say about them, because I'll wait. My inbox has been filling up from players all over the world, domestic and abroad. And for all you guys who think that this won't have a ripple down effect on American players, I wouldn't hit that gas pedal so quick, because if the WPA does decide to vote like Ishaun claimed that they will, then the BCA will have to follow suit, and that means suspending American players as well, because they're under that umbrella. They will be forced to. So these are players have rights, and a lot of you guys, Karl way back when, a lot of these European players, American players, nobody wanted to say a fucking word about it because everyone was too scared of the repercussions year after year. They just took it.
When I played, we was forced to play Euro Tour because obviously Matchroom only had 3 events: World Pool Masters, World Cup, and Pool Moscone Cup. So obviously in 2010, it was the number 1 on the Euro Tour, got in the Moscone Cup team, and then there was 4 wildcards. We've always felt like we've had to be forced to play the Euro Tour. It cost you $1,000 to go. It was $4,500 to the winner. So like now I see a few comments from a few I see a few comments now from a few ex-employees, let's just say, where they're talking about the tour. It's not easy to make money. Only a few players are making money. Mate, the tour's not even started. Let's not get silly. No. Everyone who works for the World 9 Ball Tour has been thrown into this, right, after COVID. We've had COVID as well. And look at what's actually happened. Since 2022, January, Francisco Sanchez Ruiz has won nearly $300,000 on the World 9 Ball Tour.
Yeah.
And it ain't even started.
This is only after a few years of Matchroom getting aggressive when it comes to pool. The WPA has had decades to kind of keep control or try to grow the game, and we haven't had. Yeah.
And obviously, the cards was on the table. There was a verbal agreement. It looked like Matchroom was going to sanction with the WPA. Then it all got pulled from under the plug. So then it's all been switched where Matchroom's hand has been forced to do, hasn't it? Because it looked like obviously WPA were going to be with us and all this, but obviously it's not happened, has it? So when Ishaun says all Matchroom's got to do is sanction events, it sounded to me like they were saying, oh, Matchroom, Barry Earn and Emily have just gone, we're not sanctioning events, see you later. But that's a lie. At last year's European Open, Barry Earn flew in, Ishaun flew in. They was all there having meetings.
From what I've been told, the Matchroom guaranteed a percentage increase every year in their events, or that contract would be void, which would mean that their 2.5% was guaranteed to grow. Their bottom line was guaranteed to grow every single year as a part of those terms.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's obviously to do with the rankings. But what have WPA really got anyway regarding promoters?
Yeah. You're being real quiet over there, Joe.
Yeah, well, I have a question I want to ask Karl that I've been thinking of, and it's, we saw Emily's statement about, players are welcome to play wherever they want to play, and WPA is leaning on that contract language that's pretty clear that Matchroom has full authority over players playing in other 9-ball events. Is that something that Matchroom's reconsidering in their contract language, or why does that even exist in there if Emily's going to say that no, players can play wherever?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's in the contract. I mean, obviously, when I played in events, pool players, we're not reading contracts. Let's not be stupid. You know, we're all people from bars and frigging clubs, right? Drinking and playing pool. So no one's reading contracts, right? It's never been exercised. I couldn't even tell you how long that's been in the contract. I couldn't even tell you. But the bottom line is, China Open's about to start. I've never heard anyone from Matchroom say, "Oh, Filla's going to be banned. He's not playing in Moscone Cup." I mean, let's be honest. What would Joshua Filla do if Emily all of a sudden sent out a letter saying you're banned from Matchroom events? Nothing's ever been said.
Yeah.
Would he go and play China Open and risk his 40,000?
And I'd imagine they probably did their due diligence before they booked the flight. And it's not just Josh. I saw a photo on Instagram of David and Francisco going out there as well and playing the China Open. I doubt there'll be repercussions. But on that note, that all these WPA apologists keep on posting all over Facebook, you know, if that's language that's been in there for some time, that's fine. But at the same time, you know, they're not only not exercising it, but Ishaun said at the end of it, even if it wasn't for this contract information that we've now found out about, they were still going to go down that road regardless. He said as much at the end of our interview. So
yeah. The other thing is, obviously, Emily will know when this was put in the contract. I couldn't tell you, right? But if there's a verbal agreement for Matchroom and WPA to sanction the World Nine Ball Tour, and then all of a sudden they pull the plug from it, obviously Matchroom are in a tricky position, aren't they? Because they thought they had the backing of the WPA, the governing body of pool, who apparently are going to look after the pros and the pool players around the world.
Yeah.
So if Matchroom all of a sudden are on their own and they're running the World Nine Ball Tour and they're spending millions of dollars, what's so wrong with the freaking question? The clause in the contract. You're not going to go be a fighter on UFC and then fight for someone else, are you? This is what happens in sports. What's the big deal? I don't see what the big deal is.
I'm with you, buddy. I'm with you.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the existence of that clause is what they're leaning on, or at least they were in the interview with Melina, you know, as to why now they're taking action, which I think Melina did a good job of calling them out and saying, okay, they have a clause they're not acting on, and now you're going to act on the fact that they're not acting on this clause. It just kind of seems silly.
Well,
but
the EPBF has that same language in their agreement. So it's a bit of a hypocrisy when now they want to use that as a crutch to stand on, attacking Matchroom. You know, they didn't have shit to say when we were talking with David and we brought out that information. You know, and here's the deal, like what Karl said, if you're putting your money where your mouth is, then you have a right to say if whether or not you want to be able to play here and not play somewhere else. I get that part of it, man. You know, 1,000,000% I get. But when the EPBF and bodies like that are doing 6 events a year, paying out, let's say 4,000 to 6,000 for first place, and you want to preach to me about growth, you know?
Mike, let's not forget, right? Matchroom are consistent. You know, Moscone Cup this year's 30 years, World Cup of Pool, World Pool Masters. These events have been going on and on and on. What I'm saying is the World 8 Ball, we've played 8 World 8 Ball events, at home which I've won 8 years since 2004. World 10 Ball, it's happened 8 times. You know, what events really are going on? China Open vanished because of COVID and all this. That's coming back on now. You know, what events? We played Beijing Open 2 or 3 times. That vanished. There's no consistency with the events, is there?
Well, he made it seem like there was a lot of events on the horizon. He made mention of like a lot of $50,000 out of events, you know, coming up next year. But then you'd be in the same position that Ishaun and David were criticizing Matchroom on, as far as players being able to make a living, you know. And furthermore, those are independent promoters that are doing this. So I just, you know, these guys will say that, you know, I'm one-sided when it comes to this argument. And it's not, but it's one that just makes a whole lot of sense to me. You know, the players have just had enough of their shit over the years, and nobody wants to speak up. And even a little bit that they do, everyone kind of backs off as soon as they start, you know, chirping just a little bit. And it's just not fair, man. It's not fair at all for any of them. And to be fair, if Matchroom were to do the same thing and handcuff players without having any kind of growth or a massive calendar full of events, I'd be saying the same thing.
Yeah, obviously, it'd be very tricky. Matchroom, you know, they're not going to start banning players because it's like it's still so early days, isn't it? But the fact that you know, we're all around the pool world. We all come from different, you know, places regarding pool. You know, we obviously more so me because I live in England and I know what Matchroom do in other sports and what they've done. There's nobody that is going to be able to take 9-ball to the next level like them. There's nobody, period. I played on the IPT when Kevin Trudeau come along. 2 events, guy vanishes off planet Earth chasing our money.
Yeah.
Another, you know what I mean? Another fucking crazy promoter out there. But Matchroom are not like that. This is, you know, they've got like teams in place for boxing, snooker, darts. Obviously now we have everyone who works under the World 9-ball Tour full time. You know, this is different.
How hard is it to overcome this generation of jaded players that have just been screwed over by one promoter after the next, Karl, over the last 20 plus years?
I think if it was 10 years ago, it would be tricky because you feel like we've seen it all and heard it all. But I think the likes of, I think even now, you know, obviously we've seen a few players share the letter, like the letter and say their piece, but they're obviously the ones who are not, you know, they're not scared to sit on the fence. Listen, I get it. If you're a player from Poland, Germany, whatever, you know, you've got this federation thing hanging over your head. It's a little tricky. I understand that. Not everyone's, you know, going to speak their mind, but now's the time. Now's the time for the players to go, listen, ban us, do what you want. At the end of the day, what's a player really going to lose anyway? If a player turn around and say, I'm just going to play World 9-ball Tour events and I'm going to play nothing else, what are you really going to lose? Because these other events, they've got no prestige, no history. It's like we're going about this 10-ball. 10-ball is one of the worst things that ever happened in pool, by the way. No one even speaks about it. How someone can
Come on, Karl, wait a minute.
Listen, how someone can put another ball on the table and let's just say, let's play this. It's like idiocy.
Blasphemy.
You would have said that back when you were playing, Karl.
Listen, I've played cash games, 10-ball. I get it, right? What I'm saying is, what if 10-ball in 2 years was the game everyone was playing, and then someone decides to come along and set up a 12-ball tour? Where we're going to go? Like, we're just going to keep fucking adding balls.
Listen, the reason there's 10-ball. Here's the brilliant.
Because some lunatic thought, let's play 10-ball. That was
No. You got Matchroom was brilliant in dialing in the break format so that 9-ball is now a competitive game. Because once you had players like Corey Deuel that understood how to read the rack and understood how to break the balls, and everybody learned from, you know, players like him, then 9-ball became a lot less competitive. And so their solution at the time, rather than getting creative with break boxes and things like that, was to put the extra ball on the table. Right?
You're thinking like a pool player, though, Joey.
Yeah.
You're not thinking like somebody who doesn't play pool.
Well, you were a pool player, Karl. So let's go back to when you were a pool player. You would have been in favor of playing 10-ball over 9-ball back when you were a player.
I understand that. When I've played cash games, I've played 10-ball. This is what I'm saying. I get it. But the point being is, we've got the Moscone Cup, which this year's the 30th anniversary. The most famous pool player in my country is Earl Strickland. No one has heard of Efren Reyes. No one has a clue who he is. No one has a clue who Efren Reyes is in England. In the pubs, the people who play pool, no one's got a clue who he is. Earl Strickland's the most famous person. If I speak to somebody in England who doesn't really know a lot about pool, but they might have seen it on Sky Sports at some point, it's Earl Strickland because he jumped on the table. He's played all these Moscone Cups. At the end of the day, we got to look at the history of the tournaments, and we've got to build on that because that's what sport is about, isn't it? We look back. The fact that 10-ball, we've had 8 world championships. The bottom line is it's just another ball. You play pool, Joey. We get it. But if you speak to your friend on the golf course who doesn't have a clue and you're trying to explain him 9-ball and 10-ball, he's going to think you're crazy.
Yeah.
I just don't see the difference.
That's a good point.
It doesn't matter if Predator want to do the World 10-ball in Vegas and put it on YouTube and the whole production's terrible and we do a 3-ball event, but the production's unreal. Well, what's going to win?
No,
it's about
production. Production goes a long way. That's for sure. You can't, you can't just put a camera over a table.
No, production's everything. It's getting the players well known, doing all the interviews, what Matchroom do, the pieces with the players, all the social media. It's like it's worlds apart.
Look, I'll give you a ton of credit because getting that break format the way it is now That took effort, and it took Emily being open and your team being open to experimenting to come up with the right format. But I
The
think
players voted that in, by
every
the way.
once in a while, I find one or two people that are like, "Oh, I hate the cut break and the cue ball running through the rack." But for the most part, I think everybody agrees we're seeing hill finals, hill semifinals. It's super competitive right now. You're seeing a lot of play after the break. You guys have done an amazing job with that. I believe if you came up with that a decade ago or 15 years ago, 10 ball wouldn't even be a thing.
The players voted that in, by the way.
What's that?
The players voted the break in, by the way.
Okay.
We didn't do it.
Kudos to the players because it's
Emily,
dialed in.
At the World Pool Masters, not this year, last year, she was asking the players, because what she know about pool and the break? She ain't got a clue. So rather than just sit on the fence like WPA would, they're all flying to China playing one ball on spot in the dark with no lights on the table. Are you for real? So Emily at last year's World Pool Masters was asking the players. She was going in the players' room. Obviously, me and JJ were there. Obviously, JJ, obviously he's clued up, so got an idea. We all know what works with the break. So she put a chart up. All the players had a vote. At World Cup of Pool, sorry, it was not World Pool Masters. So at the World Cup of Pool, everyone had a vote. Got changed. Who's to say it won't change again in the future? Who knows? But yeah. I don't think it's a case of, like, obviously, we need to be playing 10 ball because there's no look in it. It's about the production. It's about getting it out there. Oh, yeah, Appleton just said, don't forget the 6-inch pockets. I forgot the pockets are that big in China. You can fall in them when you walk around.
You're going to see soft.
Production. It's about production. It's about getting it out there, getting the players more well-known, more famous. It doesn't matter whether you're playing an extra ball on the table, does it? That's not really the point. The point is, let's use the history. Let's feed off the Moscone Cup. We said, it's 3,000. We've all been to the Moscone Cup. We know the buzz. We know what excitement it can bring. And like this year, some of the open events, like the final in Germany, it was unbelievable, the atmosphere. So this is what we can ride off. This 10 ball needs fucking binning. That's what it needs doing. I don't even know what Predator are doing, by the way. Don't even get me started on them.
They got the best rack in the game, buddy.
Karl, I'm going to go back to the contract for 1 minute, just because obviously you're right. Pool players aren't going to read contracts, but there's precedent in the pool world. We saw the WPBA hold April Larson accountable when she attended some regional events and things like that. And I think the general pool public is just completely against the notion that players wouldn't have autonomy to go to the events that they would want to go to. You look at a lot of American players this year, they made the choice not to go to Germany or not to go to Spain, and they stayed, and they're pool players. They're going to play in events. Some of them might be 9-ball events. And so I think that's the big concern. As a player, wouldn't you be concerned about that?
I think we're going to slowly see the transition from American players, where they've stayed in America traveling, haven't they? Playing in a lot of the events in America. European pool players are different, same as the Asian players. We travel all over. That's just the way it is. Maybe that's why there's obviously the Moscone Cup's been quite one-sided over recent years, because all the European players, we travel everywhere. That's just what we do. But we've seen a few players come over the sort of first half of the season, like Shane Wolford. I understand if it's still expensive to come over. I get it, but I go back to what I was saying before. This is still such early days. We're talking about something here where events are still being added. I'll say to Emily, oh, you've put a tournament on there. A promoter's run a tournament in Spain with blue cloth. She go, I know, but this is just where we're at the minute. Like everything under the World 9-ball, so I'm saying it should be played on a grey cloth. Should be a 4-inch pocket. Should be the same ball. Should be the freaking the purple ball, Emily, not the orange. So I'm giving her all this stick, but she's saying, we get it, but where we're at right now, everything's just up in the air, and there's all this shit going on with the WPA. But I think moving forward, there was who was the kid who just got to the final? Shane beat. I'd never even heard of this guy. Tall guy, young.
Spencer.
Guy.
Spencer.
Yeah,
Ladley?
Spencer. Yeah, so there's a lot of players in America. I seen it at last year's US Open. The kid with long hair from Florida who lost in the final of Junior Open. From Florida.
Trenton White.
Trent White. There's a lot of players in America. So I know people keep saying, like the Moscone Cup's one-sided, but we just need, like the Americans just need the players to travel around a lot more. And I know it's not easy because it's expenses, but Shane, Skylar, all the Europeans, all the Asians, everyone's doing it.
I think the toughest thing for the American players is they make the investment, or they have supporters or backers that make the investment for a year or two, right? We saw that with a player like Nick DeLeon. He had, I guess, enough money to make that investment for like a year. Then this year he wasn't able to get out to a lot of events. It is very expensive, Karl, with a lot of the European events. I mean, you're talking a huge expense of the players, and hopefully we'll see more events stateside where the players could, continue to make a run at that Moscone Cup. Because I think you're right. I think probably the best point you made on this show is the fact that Moscone Cup is really the marquee event, right? It's everybody looks forward to that, and everything is geared towards that event. And so it draws players in, it draws the fans in. Mike and I start talking about it. As soon as last year ended, we're talking about next year, and we're figuring out like, hey, who's going to be on the team? Who's the best pick? Why did Jeremy pick Earl?
That's why I reached out to Karl in the first place. The whole reason why I wanted to get this guy on the show was to talk about European Moscone Cup players. And then all this fucking drama happens over the last. David wins the European Open, and the wheels come falling off. But that's why. Listen, we were never able to talk about pool like this before. Years ago, it was just a couple of events a year, regional events going on with no organization or no understanding as far as what's the end game. And now we're talking about it. Every week of the year. It's completely different than what it was.
Yeah, and obviously, there's all these events added on. I just think, me personally, you've got to feed off the Moscone Cup. It's on live television. 3,000 people go. The atmosphere is incredible. You know what I mean? We have to work back off that. So that's at the end of the day where you're going to create the stars, aren't you? The Fillers, the Sanchez's, the SVPs. You know what I mean? It's like when 60 Minutes did their show at the US Open on Shane last year. This is what we need. They're not doing it on, he's 10 ball or he's 8 ball. Do you know what I mean? It's not about that, is it? You got to look at history. I remember seeing a few months ago, Pat Fleming, I think it was, he put something up. It was like a ranking from I think it was the 80s or something. Like Earl Strickland was on it, all these players, and I messaged him. I said, what game was that? He said, it was 9 ball.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? At the end of the day, 9 ball's the game, isn't it? It's the game.
9 ball is an exciting game of pool. There's a lot of drama involved, and Matchroom's done an incredible job with the production. I'm not ready to say it's the only game. I think there's value in the other games. I really do. And, if you tune into the Texas Open that just happened out here, watching Tony Chohan win the One Pocket, there's things you get out of other pool games that for someone who's played different games, we like that, but
that's the pool
so
player.
I would say easy on the 9 ball is the absolute only thing, but for TV production, I think you guys are doing a great job, and it leads to the Moscone Cup, which is a 9 ball event, which is great. Why don't we talk Moscone Cup?
Let's
switch gears. We're getting towards the end of the year, Karl. The excitement's starting to build. United States has been, I would say last year they were in the match, kind of seemed like they had a good chance, coming into the later stages of the event, but they're obviously a big underdog. They were a big underdog the last few years. They're going to be a big underdog again. What are your thoughts going into it this year?
Yeah, you sort of feel like it's going to be similar again, don't you? Obviously, Europe always seem to bring 5 players. Always feel like America, just that one player, just a little bit too short. But the last 2 years, obviously, it's been close, hasn't it? Early on, they've made a game, just a couple of shots here and there. So I think we're definitely seeing a little bit of a change. But I mean, I don't know where JJ goes. I mean, is it time to throw one of these young boys in, one of the young kids, just say have a go?
Is that what you do?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, I've not seen enough of the young.
Who?
Well, that's what I was just going to say. I've not seen a lot of these young players play, but I'm sure JJ has. So he's going to have a better idea than me. But I don't see why not just throw one in, because I mean, obviously, I think Earl's time's done now, isn't he? He's had his goal last year.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see you later, Earl. We'll see you later. That's for sure. No,
Yeah,
that
I mean,
that ship is definitely sailed. I'm with you, Carl, when it comes to throwing in a young American player. You can't go in there with the same team and expect different results. I think that Team USA was on the cusp, and I'm not someone who, roots with where I'm born. I root with what my eyes see and the quality of players. I think that we're definitely not nearly as deep as Europe by far, but there's a few players who can give the Europeans some trouble. I think if you core like you have with Sky and Shane, you add in some pieces like let's say a Tyler who plays a lot of big names, really tough and doesn't crumble under
Yeah,
the Moscone pressure. And then you pepper them in with let's say like a Wolford and then one other wild card. I think the USA can give them hell. And then you have
yeah, I
the
agree.
European side where David came out of nowhere and now he's on the radar. Federer just further solidified his position when it comes to playing on a Moscone Cup, and I don't think we've ever seen him play in front of a crowd before. So that'll favor the American side as well. So there's a lot of variables which could make this year's Moscone Cup very exciting to go and watch.
Yeah, I agree. I think, like, obviously the Moscow Cup, I know Europe have done well over the last sort of decade, but listen, it's race to five under that heat. If I just feel like America have just like made a bit of a silly mistake now again in a certain match at a crucial score. I remember like Chris Reinhold, he missed that opportunity. I think it was to go 7-3 up. He missed that Hill. He missed a
Oh,
4 or 5 ball.
with Kachi, yeah,
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 yeah. I just feel like America are not far away. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
yeah.
I agree, and I like people were already in the chat as soon as we brought up Earl's name. Like, don't go there. Earl Strickland has tons of supporters out there, and I think, just talking about this briefly, I think if you're gonna pick that veteran like an Earl Strickland, they have to also be good for chemistry, and I think we saw that last year. I think there was, which Jeremy had no way of knowing going in. But I think right away it kind of seemed like, and even my wife who doesn't watch pool is texting me saying, "Why are all the American players seem like they have to lift Earl up? Have to get him
Yeah,
psyched up, And so I hope Jeremy goes on the side of youth and chemistry this year. That's kind
yeah,
of the way I think the U.S. has the best shot.
yeah. That's the
So
way I'd
who would
put it.
that be, Joey? Who would that be? Youth and chemistry.
Well, I think Wolford's got to be on the team this year. I think he probably felt slighted last year. He did all he could do, really, to get on the team last year. I think he's got to be on the team this year.
I
Yeah,
agree with you, but him not showing up to the last few majors isn't going to do him any favors. I can guarantee that, and it's going to leave him in a position where he may have to be a wild card if somebody comes in and steals one of these automatic spots. Because that's what's crazy is that this past event that ended in Turning Stone, if an American player would have won it, they would have put them right in the map as far as being on the team. And we're in September, so
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the only slight worry. It's like, listen, we all know what money's been in pool or is in pool right now, but you still, Skylar, Shane, they're the ones that still come to the events. You know what I mean? I know people look at prize money, but they've got the sponsors. You know what I mean? They've the top pool players have done well. You know what I mean? A lot of these top pool players, they've got money. Don't worry about that. So I just think it needs that. Billy Thorpe seems to be back in the mix, doesn't he? He was
he
at the
does.
last event. I always felt like he was good for Team America because he brings that other side where he gets them involved and pumped up. So I'd like to see Billy back in the team, really. I think it should
Good
be
for
like,
TV too.
yeah, I think Skylar, Shane.
I just don't want to see Billy in the overalls again.
Yeah, exactly. Just put him in the team and leave them at home.
No, let him shoot with the
That's reason enough.
with the Bud Lights coming across the chest there. With the overalls on. Let him play like that.
But if I was involved in the American team, I'd be doing anything in my power to go and frigging find Justin Bergman.
Yeah. I think
I
we're all
mean,
looking for him.
He was great in the team, that guy.
I reached out to
Amazing
Justin
talent.
maybe like a month ago to see if he wanted to come on the show. Ironically enough, didn't hear back from him. But I also talked to him last in December shortly, and yeah, I think all of America knows his talent. I think a lot of it was a bottom line kind of standpoint, which I can't blame him. But he could very well make a run like he did that one year at the international and put himself on the Moscone radar if he decided to, if he choose to.
when we look at last year's event, one of the things that just perplexed me is after the event, I remember talking to Oscar Dominguez and just feeling like he didn't even really get a chance to play. And
Yeah.
so, like, he's that player that's great for chemistry. He's got a ton of experience, but we didn't see much of him. Just the way the lineup shook out and the certain matches that he was a part of, it just seemed like he didn't get a chance to play that much. Would you agree with that, Karl?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think the Moscone is a bit like that, isn't it? It's always geared up to, like, you've got that fans pick now. Unfortunately, you're always going to see, like, I don't know, Filler or Shaw playing Shane or Skyler now, aren't you? Obviously, Earl, I think he won one of the fans' choices last year. So that sort of lends itself to that way, doesn't it? And then same with the doubles. It's just, yeah, I think if you're not a big character or someone who's like won big points, you're always going to be playing second fiddle a little bit in the Moscone.
Yeah.
But obviously, it's in your own hands, isn't it? If you play well in the doubles and you win your singles point, that's how you make your name in the team.
Are we going to see like another curveball, Karl? Because the winner of the U.S. Open is going to get $60,000. Betting odds would say that a guy from Europe is probably going to win that, and put himself in. I think that would be good enough to get the second pick if he's at 60ish. So, do you think that we're going to see kind of an unknown get there again, or maybe a guy who's not discussed? Because David really wasn't in that discussion a whole lot this year before winning that Jacoby event and then following that up with the European Open.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that can happen. That's the beauty of it, really. And obviously you've got all these other, other events that are obviously part of the World 9-ball ranking, which is good because if you're just a few thousand behind, you can go and play in one of these other ones and try and catch up. But obviously there's so many good players from Europe, but I still think it's going to be somebody, one of the big names that, wins the US Open. I don't see it being like, like a newbie, like a lower ranked European who's not won one yet. I still feel like, like obviously David, he might have been struggling a little bit over the last 12 months, but he's still won 2 World Masters, so he's done it in that sort of arena and he's played in Moscone Cups. So
I don't know, Karl. I don't know. I don't necessarily
he made
agree.
a move in like 45 days. I mean, he made a move out of nowhere to put himself in the position that he was in. Literally like a month and a half of one win and then following it up with a major win. Boom, he's in the second spot. That's the beauty of the tour, man.
I think this year there's so much parity, right? You had that event where Beasterbosch makes the finals. You could see something like that where one of those guys snaps off the U.S. Open and all of a sudden it throws Europe into a bit of a scramble of thinking like, okay, how's this team going to do? Because it's not those normal, like if you look at last year's team, I mean, rock solid. Year before, rock solid, And not that those guys aren't amazing players. If you can win the U.S. Open, you're an amazing player. But if you're not part of that brat pack that's kind of been together playing, in that Moscone under the heat, under the lights, things might be a little different. So I'm pulling for a more obscure European to win the U.S. Open. That's for sure.
No, yeah, I get it. Yeah, that could happen. Obviously, if someone comes out of the wood, if you've never played in a Moscone Cup with the crowd, you're never really going to know how you're going to handle it at the end of the day. Obviously, Fedor's like world class, but as Melina said, he's still not played with that intense crowd. So obviously, I believe he'll be okay, but you still never know, do you?
Yeah. Let's circle back to where we started at, Karl. Do you think this whole Matchroom WPA shit gets resolved or gets any kind of traction moving forward in the next couple of months?
I think something will happen. I don't know what will happen. I would be surprised if WPA start handing out bans now. After you only have to go on social media to see the hate they've been getting. So we'll see. Obviously, Matchroom, we all know what Matchroom do. We all know what they've brought to the table for pool players. I just don't. I don't really see where it's going. I did hear a rumor though that if they do exercise bans, that's going to count for hayball as well, which I find a bit weird.
Well, so like the Chris Mellings and Shane, the few times that he plays that event, players like that, Chua.
Which
but there's no representative there, so.
Yeah, but I mean, if that's what happens, that just shows you what they're about. Because I mean, it's a different game for a start. I don't really see what hayball's got to do with.
Yeah, it seems like they took that stance when they suspended the Singapore pool players for snooker infraction just recently. So I wouldn't be surprised there. I hope that it gets resolved, and that's really what all this talk and conversation is geared towards. Not so much just enjoying the drama of it all, because they do a good enough job on their own making fools of themselves. All I did was invite them on the show, you know. But the point is to get these players the fair the bottom line, and you guys deserve, not you guys because you're not playing anymore, Carl, but the players deserve a better shake than what they've gotten before. So I'm not under anyone's thumb. I don't care who I piss off. We're gonna keep on talking with them and calling them out, inviting them on the show, and keep on having uncomfortable conversations. I would guess they're gonna go radio silent though from
They're
now
not
until
coming back on
November.
the show, Molina.
You've ruined them.
You've burned that bridge,
Yeah.
buddy. And it wasn't the interview. It was the 572 Facebook posts after the interview you've made.
Well, that's what I'm just pointing out things they said. I'm people know exactly what was going on. And that's with a month or so to prepare. Imagine if they just came on like that. So anyway,
Yeah.
I digress.
Well, I hope it
Carl,
gets resolved too. I hope it gets resolved because, like, we're all about the players, and I know you have your views on 9-ball, 10-ball, other things. I want to see players be able to play what they want to play, go to events that they want to go to and thrive, right? We're all about growing the sport in our own ways. You have your views. Matchroom has their views. Predator has their views. CSI. I want to see the most opportunity possible for the players. And really, that's why we do this. So,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, Karl, thanks so much for joining, man. It's always a pleasure having you on, and
no problem.
Hope we get to see you in the U.S. soon. You're going to be at the U.S. Open, right?
Yeah, U.S. Open. Looking forward to that. Obviously, such a big, important event for 9-ball, Joey.
I don't hate 9-ball.
Yeah.
How's the US Open 10-ball going, by the way? I don't really hear anyone speak about that event.
They might reschedule it again for a third time. So we appreciate you coming on. I'll see you in Atlantic City in a few weeks, buddy. It's gonna be a fun time. Looking forward to it. Joey, man, thanks for making an appearance. It's rare,
yeah, somebody's got to balance you out.
Well, what are you gonna do? Yeah, I'm living my life, man. We'll see you guys later.